Stand Up Diaries with Michelle Christine.
Hello and welcome to Stand Up Diaries, entry 180. Wow, we hit the 8-0. I realized how long it's been since I've written an 8. Well, I guess I do an 8 every time it's like 108, or that's the episode right now, really original Michelle, or like 98, 88 was obviously 2 8s. But I'm just not the greatest. I was nervous to do the 8, but I did it. And here we are. I'm sitting on the floor today. I don't know what happened to my tripod. It's somewhere floating in the realm of time, I'm sure. And it's been a while. It's been a couple months. But I find that every time I come back from overseas, it's a little bit of a struggle to, well, the title of this was Back to the LA Grind. It's always a bit, mentally tough to leave, say, doing a big fringe festival. You're up every day, you have a show, you're a one-woman team, so I just don my costume, I go out, I flyer, do the show, next day, lather, rinse, repeat. And I feel like maybe it's something the way that anyone finds himself that are in a very definitive routine, like maybe if you're unfortunately in jail, or you're in the military, or things like that are just very regimented, that when you come back and you have a life that's no longer so structurally regimented, that you almost get overwhelmed with all of the things that you could be doing at the time. Like, what path is the right path? When you're very busy, the path is, the path you need to do to succeed for that night's show, which is, like I said, get on the costume, flyer all day. So I find that when I'm away, I'm very, very productive. I notice myself improving. I meet wonderful people. Every night I'm doing a show, doing what I love, and hanging out with some of the cool people that enjoyed the show, and a lot of people kind of have great words of encouragement and things like that. So you're just very in the zone, I guess you could say. And so coming back to Los Angeles is like, okay, how do I keep that momentum going? How do I make sure that I'm progressing and doing the things that I need to do to continue to keep getting further in my career? And so one of the first things that I did when I came back was I had a Truth or Dare show that I did with Catherine, and I did one of those in April. It was April 7th. And then after that, we just did another Truth or Dare show yesterday. And this was kind of our celebratory Truth or Dare birthday show, because I was born May 2nd. It was my 30th birthday. You know what? Maybe a lot of this is also turning 30 and having one of those crises where you're like, I'm 30. What have I done? I go see an NHL playoff game in Anaheim because my friend Ryan from Toronto just visited for a week, and we see these guys, and they're superstars, and they're amazing at what they do, and everyone's just cheering, so exciting to watch them play, and they're like 22, and you're like, oh, they're so young. But whatever, it is what it is. Comedy's the long game. It's a marathon, not a race. But it's just, you kind of have a bit of a crisis of being I'm 3-0 now. I'm moving on. I'm an adult. You don't have the excuses of being in your 20s like you did before, because I feel like the moment of, you have so much time to think about what you want to do, or who you want to be with, or if you want to have kids or not. That so much time moment, I feel like you blink, and then it's like, you're married now, and you should be kind of on your career path, and when are you having kids? It becomes when, as opposed to, you have tons of time. Now it's like, you do have a clock. So I thought it was interesting one time in Adelaide, just doing the show, and then after it was a bunch of ladies, and some of them were in their later 30s, early 40s, talking about how hard it was for a few of them to conceive. And then you're just like, oh my gosh, like, this is not, I'm going to blink and then that's going to be me too. So it's the time just, it races on. It's so crazy. And then it is sometimes hard to think that you're doing enough to make the life for yourself that you want. So I am back to that LA grind, and before long I won't even be here anymore. I'll be back to Edinburgh in August for the Fringe Festival. And what I found about the Truth or Dare shows was that it was kind of getting hard, because I felt like some of the Truth and Dares became a little bit repetitive for the show in April. So I was really hoping that the Truth or Dares for this show would be a little bit more unique and adventurous, and thankfully they were, because one of the ones that we had too was a thing about wrestling. about what it would be like to be like The Undertaker versus The Rock. And Catherine knows who The Rock is. He's a movie star now. But I was like, do you know who The Undertaker is? She's like, no. And so I just kind of went up to the microphone and I was like, dum. And then I walked to the back of the stage and kind of hung my head down, put my arms straight, and just like slowly walked to the microphone. And all the people who knew who he was were like, yeah, we know who that is. So it's always nice when you can have things that are unique. And I never would have thought I would have been on stage trying to recreate The Undertaker entering like a WrestleMania or something like that. So it was good. And so I really felt like that show was more fun, and we had 4 comics instead of 5 or 6, which I think was really important because some of the shows have been running a little bit longer. We don't mean for them to, but comics go on stage, they're having a great time, maybe they don't see the light right away. Every person does an extra 2 minutes, then you times that by 6, you got 12 minutes, and so that's like having a whole extra person on the show. So I thought, you know what, let's be calm. We work really hard to promote this show. We work really hard, handing out flyers in 30 degrees Celsius or 90 Fahrenheit, heat to people to invite them to the show. So why not take a little bit of the pressure off, have a few less acts, and then enjoy our time on stage that much more. And I think it really was a really strong show on Saturday night. So I was really, really happy. And it's always great when you see your partner in crime doing great, the audience has excellent feedback, and just like the banter is fun. I think it's really fun to host a show where I have 2 people on stage, because most times in stand-up you are alone and it's kind of unique and there's a bit of improv. So I'm working on skills that I don't work with when I'm doing a solo show, but that is not to say that I'm not also looking forward to kind of going back and doing these 1-hour shows, because there's really no growth like being on stage for that long. So the show is going to be called 50% Canadian, 100% Crazy, that I'm going to tour again, and then it's going to be an updated version of the show that I had before, so very similar kind of my life story as it continues to unfold. And I'm doing another cool show at the Nerd Melt showroom. So this is at Meltdown Comics. And I was very excited to land this venue because it wasn't easy. You have to be very persistent, and I think I've mentioned before there's a fine line between persistence and annoyance, and you don't want to cross that line, but you also want to show confidence in your product and not take no for an answer. And so when I asked initially to do the show, I really had to kind of really push for it, and I landed a June 16th date at 7 p.m. So that's a Friday night, and this will be my first show that I'm going to do in the States. It's like a ticketed event. I've done a lot of free shows in Australia, and I did do some paid $10 ticketed shows in Canada after working for about a year and producing a few at the Comedy Bar, because it had a venue fee. But I've been lucky, whereas the Ossington didn't have a venue fee, the Virgil didn't have a venue fee, so I wasn't as and I had some free hire venues in Perth and Adelaide, that I wasn't as in Melbourne. I wasn't as, excited to say, hey, let's have it $10, because I was just feeling out those markets. I didn't know what to expect. But I've been in Los Angeles for long enough now, and when I said, hey, this is the show I want to do, and they wrote back, look, you're going to have to sell about 30 tickets to be able to break even on the venue, I thought, okay, now is the time. Because I always thought I would know the time when I could start charging for tickets here in the States, and I have this visa, so I can legally be a comedian here. I need to start using it. And I thought, this is the time. It's the moment. I can work hard, and it's going to be a Zelda-themed show, and it's going to be called The Legend of Michelle Christine, A Link to the Laughs, which my friend Andrew, we were kind of brainstorming when he came over for a board game night, was like, yeah, that would be a cool name. And I was like, that's great. He's like, take it. So that's the name of the show. And then I got my friend in Germany, who I met in Edinburgh at the Fringe in Edinburgh, who came to one of the shows, who did one of my 4th anniversary of comedy posters in Melbourne, where he kind of made me a comic book Mountie. Well, he made me a comic book Link, and so I'm all dressed up as Link, and I'm going to get the posters printed soon, and I just really thought that poster came out great because it tied in a lot of elements from different Zelda games, Navi from Ocarina of Time, or the Mask from Majora's Mask, or the Guardian from Breath of the Wild. So it's got a lot of different elements to it, and it came out super banging. And my friend and fellow Canadian comedian Sabrina Jalise is going to be on the show. She's been on a few shows at the Virgil with me, and she's amazing. And I have Bassam Youssef, who I'm like super stoked about because I've never met him before. He is the Jon Stewart of Egypt. He was there doing the show, and I watched this really great documentary of his at USC called Tickling Giants, and he's really quite a legend and a hero, and he was unfortunately had to move away from Egypt after some political strife because he was a political satirist, and he was so great at what he did, but unfortunately a regime change meant that he had to relocate, and not with a lot of time. So he used to be a heart surgeon, and then he became this absolute sensation. 30 million people watched him every single week doing his political satire. So I'm incredibly excited to have him on the show, and he follows me on Twitter, which is amazing because he has 9.4 million followers. So he is definitely a big deal, and the fact that I'm even on his radar at all and that he's willing to do the show is incredibly amazing. So I cannot wait for that show, and I have to just go out there and sell, and make sure that that is a show worthy of the people that I have on it. So that's kind of what I've been doing. Back to that LA grind, and then before I know it, I'll be in Edinburgh. But I will keep you posted. There will definitely be a video before then. This has been your next edition of Stand Up Diaries. I have been Michelle Christine.